What's up, tribe? How you guys doing? I am going to give you guys my review for David Makes Man, season 1, episode 7. Look, I am exhausted, but I was like, oh my gosh, I have got to talk about this episode. It was so good, and we only had 3 episodes left, and I am upset by it. So shouts out to El Teddy once again, and shouts out to Every Reviews once again, who made me watch this show. Okay. But we start the episode off with fireworks, and at first I was like, is that a Miami thing? We doing fireworks on the 4th of July? But then I realized it's a flashback moment. I mean, fireworks on Halloween, because I knew this episode was dealing with Halloween. So I was like, why are they doing fireworks during Halloween? But then I realized, like I said, this is a flashback moment where we see, we see guys down there smoking their weed or whatever, and we see Shinobi come out and kind of fuss at them a little bit. And then David comes running up. And they do a really good job in these flashbacks of making David look young. Like younger. Like not real young, but you could tell it's a different time. And he comes running up like, yo, Sky up there? And Shinobi's like, whoa. Like, we don't make these announcements. You know what I mean? We don't make these announcements like, and Sky comes out and he's like, it's all good. You know, it's cool. And he ends up, letting letting David come up and even putting his arm around him. And David sort of gives Shinobi the look back like, yeah, I got this. So we learn a lot in this episode. And one of the things we learn is we see where the issue with Shinobi and David stems from. Shinobi was one of Sky's lieutenants. He didn't always work with with Dreadlock Boy, Kool-Aid Dreadlock Boy, but he was working under Sky, and he saw that David had this special relationship with Sky. Now, I don't know if it was all business and he was jealous of the fact that David sort of had a special relationship with Sky, or if it was more to it. And I'm gonna tell you when we get later on in the episode, that'll make some sense to you. So Shinobi is really pissed off, and we see him sort of walking off. David is talking to Sky, and Sky is telling him in a nice way, basically, he said, what I always tell you. He was like, never let them know your next move. He was like, so announcing my location, is that letting somebody, giving somebody info on your next move? And he was like, I get it, Sky. So Sky was able to talk to him in a way that it wasn't yelling, cussing him out, but basically got the same point across, like, don't be letting nobody know my moves. Then we see Shinobi walking off, and we see, we fast forward to present day. And they were in this abandoned apartment, clearly it was the stash house or whatever. And it's got spray paint. It's got a spray paint of a crown up on the wall. Again, that'll become important later on in the episode. But we flash to the present, or however you want to word that. And we see that now Ray is sitting in the seat where Ray is Dreadlock Kool-Aid Boy. I'm going to go ahead and call him by his regular name. We see that Ray is sitting in the chair that Sky was sitting in that flashback with the crown over top of the chair. And Shinobi comes in and he like, yo, David wants to see you, or Day or whatever. So he goes down there, and what they're doing is David is teaching, because remember they got the prescription pad. And okay, this is going to sound crazy. I'm glad that they are not moving in stupidity. I'm glad they didn't just get this prescription pad and just decide they was just going to act stupid, write a bunch of scripts, and be going crazy with it. David is like, nah, there's certain things you have to do to stay under the radar. You can't write crazy prescriptions. You can't write 50,000 pills. Like, these are the things that are going to be red flags that the pharmacist is going to call the police. Now, what I'd be interested to know is how much of this is David just being a smart young man? How much of this did Sky teach him? How much of this did he learn from watching his mom's own addiction? Because it's clear that his mother's addiction had something to do with pills. Like, we got that out the way. So I'm curious to see that, right? I'm curious to find that out. So, but David is basically breaking it down to Kool-Aid Dreadlock Boy. I just can't stop now. He's Kool-Aid Dreadlock Boy. But he's breaking down milligrams and how many times a day and what's the difference between this drug and the red flags. And he sort of makes a little dig at Shinobi, basically saying, he's a hothead and he, the way he moving gonna get y'all caught. Shinobi overhears it and he's like, yo, I'm sick of you and your slick mouth. Like, I'm going to really take your ass. But as always, Ray is always there to stop it. And Ray is like, look, chill out. He don't mean nothing by it, right? Right, David? You don't mean nothing by it. David like, yeah, I don't mean nothing by it. But he does. So, while he's in the car, Seren calls David to remind him about church. And Seren is like, make sure you coming. Make sure you coming. Make sure you coming. Make sure you coming. And David is like, all right, man, I'm coming. All right, man, I'm coming. Okay, yeah. And even Dreadlock Boy was like, yo, that better be a girl the way you caking over there. Like, the way you over there, that better be a girl that's all in your grill. But we know it's not. We know it's Seren. And when David hangs up the phone, he even has this, like, little smile, like, way off smile on his face. And I'm like, Dave, okay. And y'all been putting it in my comments, and we've even talked about it on the panel. Shouts out to the David Makes Man panel that we had a couple of times. That whole relationship between Seren and David being more than just a friendship thing, whether it be on one side or the other or mutual, and they just don't know how to express their feelings. But we see them really get into some stuff this week. So, but David, remember the whole church thing. So next thing we see is David walking to meet, and I guess where he's walking to is where Seren lives. And Seren must live in a gated community, or at least one of those communities where you have to drive past a security guard to get in. And David is there. He sees a security guard, and he starts turning around. You can see he's a fish out of water. He's feeling nervous. The security guard is like, yo, can I help you? And just at that moment, they come pulling up. They get in the car, and as soon as they get in the car, I could feel the tension from where I was sitting that something wasn't right. Seren has got this, far off look, and he's looking nervous. And when David gets in, he's having trouble with his seatbelt. And when Seren's mother turns around, she's got this bruise on her cheek. And my first assumption, or my first thought, I should say, was, oh my goodness, they just beating each other. Like, the man beating the woman beating Seren. It's all kinds of stuff going on. Come to find out, Seren did it. And it was an accident, but, whatever. No, let me take that back. She said, it's just a love tap from my baby boy. She said, we used to be able to tussle all the time, but, I guess those days are over. And Seren is like staring off, like he knows that whatever happened, they saving it for after church, but he gonna get it. And they do that thing they did on the first episode where David is looking at Seren and he's conveying the message through his looks. And, they're writing it on the screens. And, David is like, yo, Seren, you okay? Seren will not make eye contact with David. Seren won't look at him like he is. And he's picking at his finger to the point where it's bleeding. And even though that's a light form of self-mutilation, it is a form of self-mutilation. It's not cutting. It's not as on that level. But it's just showing those nerves. There's something, and he's picking. So, they get to church. David, of course, is nervous because, church ain't his thing. And, Seren gets his tie straight and everything. And Seren says something about, yeah, my dad taught me how to do this. He was like, David said, don't you mean your stepdad? And he said, well, he wants me to call him dad. My mom seems to agree, so it's whatever. And David was like, well, what do you want? Seren said it doesn't matter. I'm like, oh boy. Wow. We see Seren go join the choir. He's singing the lead, so, he's the only one that has on a jacket. Everybody else has on white shirts with black ties and black pants. Seren's the only one with a jacket, so, he's singing the little lead. But as soon as he rolls up on his boys, he's dapping fives, whatever. And once again, we make that connection that what makes Seren happy is music. He's immediately, smiling. We hadn't seen Seren smile the whole time. Preacher get to preaching, honey, and the preacher, because it's Halloween, and the preacher get to preaching, and he gets to talking about how we need to, even though Halloween is the devil's holiday, we need to be reminded of what God saves us from and what he delivers us from. And I mean, and David gets to flashing back. He gets to thinking back. Because remember, Sky, after last week, Sky's gone. Sky's not there giving him, messages or anything anymore. And David, is thinking about Sky. He's flashing at all these different scenes we've seen throughout the episode. And David ends up standing up now. In his head, he yelled out, "I am man," or "I am," something he said. But he ain't say it out loud, but he did stand up. So, of course, everybody kind of looking. So, Seren's mom is like, "David, what's wrong? You need to go to the bathroom?" And David ends up leaving out the church, and he goes into the bathroom. And the next thing we do, we see the back of Sky's head. Sky won't face him. All we see is the back of his head, and we see that that's where the bullet was. So, when he got shot, he must have got shot in his head. So, we see the bullet. We see his head bleeding. We'll let you know it's a bullet wound. And David even actually tries to speak to Sky, and every time he looks at Sky, all he sees is Sky, the back of the Sky's back, when we can see the bullet. Sky will not face him. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like, even though it was, a vision, even, it's that moment that he realizes that Sky just won't come back to him. That comfort is not there. And even when he ran out the church, he ran past everybody. He ran past the teacher. He ran past his mama. He ran past JG, like, as he was running out the church. So David is having a little moment. He's having a little moment, right? So church is over. And even, let me just real quick, even when they go into church, you just get this, it's so scary to see this whole scene. I remember looking at it going, you just never know what's going on in somebody's house. They were so normal. Walking into church, the good, happy family, shaking hands with the deacons and greeting everybody. And they know people, and you could tell they have a moment there. And it was just so scary to see that. I was like, you just have no idea what people have going on in their home. Oh my gosh, it was so scary. So then we see Seren singing, and David is so proud of him. He's smiling and he's just enjoying it. And Seren is singing his little heart out, honey, and David is just feeling it. So, they get to the end of church, and of course this is supposed to be Seren's moment, but of course his mother has to remind him that he cracked on this part and he took too much of a breath on that part. And so it just lets you know that no matter how good Seren does, it's just not good enough. Like, nothing is good enough. And they're leaving church, and David's like, well, thanks for the ride. I mean, thanks a lot. It's a bus stop up the street. He's ready to take the bus home. Seren knows what's waiting for him when he get home. So Seren ends up convincing his parents to give David a ride home. And David tried to talk, like, no. But they talked to him, Seren talked his parents into it. So when they get back to David's house, David's mom is hyped up over Halloween, honey, and she was telling David, when you get back, we're going to have the haunted house, and we're going to do this, and we're going to go trick-or-treating, and we're going to do that, we're going to celebrate Halloween, and Seren can even join. And David was just like, yeah, whatever. So when they get there, the neighborhood is jumping, they getting ready for Halloween. His mom's dressed up. JG is a hood, okay? JG is a whole thug. Anyway, and once again, Seren, he know what's waiting for him, so he's trying to prolong this whooping he got coming, or whatever he got coming to him, and they're able to convince Seren's parents to let him stay for the Halloween festivities. All Seren has on is his church suit. JG was like, Miss Elijah will hook you up. Don't even worry about it. Now look, okay, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention this. Now, Gloria, I like you. I like you, Glo. You disappointed me last week when you were selling the drugs at the AA meeting, or the NA meeting, but I like you. If you don't stop that dang on limping, anyway. But it comes into play later on too, so. But she's still limping, honey. She must have broke some ribs, okay? So So of course, Seren is like, Miss Elijah, like, who is that? Honey, Miss Elijah comes down the steps in all her glory, okay? Miss Elijah looks good in her little Boliqua's little outfit. I know I didn't say that right, okay? Don't put it in the comments. Anyway, so they end up taking Seren and David up to Miss Elijah's apartment so Miss Elijah can hook him up. And Miss Elijah turns his suit into, I forgot the name of the movie and the character, but you know the old movie where one half is a woman, the other half is a man. And Elijah, and I was worried about it because I was looking, I said, that's a little risque, don't you think? That you got the boy walking around in a little bit of a dress. But Seren looks in the mirror and he loves it. Seren loves it, okay? But when they got ready for Elijah to put some makeup on Seren was like, boys don't wear makeup. And of course, Miss Elijah's looking at him like, excuse me? I'm sorry, what? Say that again? Boys don't do what? And she picks up on the vibe that Seren is nervous and Seren is a little apprehensive. And she said, you know what? She said, it's just a little bit of makeup. And Seren keeps, jumping back. She said, look, I keep my door open for a reason. Because people can come and go as they please. Nobody has to act like I got them locked in here. So you can leave at any time I make you feel uncomfortable. And Seren just kind of looks at her. She takes some of her makeup. And she gives him some of her lip gloss. She said, that'll be our little secret. And then, what did she say? She said something else to him. But either way, he relaxed enough and he closed his eyelids because she was like, close your eyes, let me get you some makeup. So she closed his eyelids and, he closed his eyelids and let her do his makeup. But she clearly saw something and understood something and something passed between the two of them, Next thing you know, Seren comes out with his little, the makeup is half woman, half man. And he looked really nice. Now, all I kept thinking was, please do not let his mama roll up on this. But okay. So, when he comes out, everybody thinks he looks good. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's like, oh my gosh, you look good or whatever. And, they trying to get David to put on a costume. David didn't put on no costume, but he said, I'll take that. And what it is a crown. And David ends up putting that crown on his head and cocking it to the side. The other thing we find out is that JG is in his feelings when he finds out that David and that Star and JG already... Let me get myself together. When JG finds out that Star and David already know each other, JG was like, what? When did y'all meet? Where was I? He thought that Star was his own personal friend and that nobody else was supposed to be his friend. So, anyway, they get to go trick-or-treating. That damn nasty-ass JG, this woman done gave them peanuts. JG talking about something. What the fuck is this? The look on that woman's face was like, what did he just say? Star was like, thank you, man. We appreciate it. JG walks off like, so he said, so we just gonna, so he get the walk, he walking off. He's like, so we just gonna act like she ain't just play us with these damn peanuts. Honey, they coming down the walkway and the property manager, she starts yelling at Miss Elijah talking because she sees Seren, and she starts yelling at Miss Elijah talking about some. I know you don't, you don't have this boy sashaying through here with an old dress on. You putting your old demon spirits on him. It's infectious or like an infection, infection, not affection. Now, Miss Elijah know everybody tea, honey. Miss Elijah said, speaking of infections, shouldn't you be getting ready to go take your medicine? And the look on her face tells me that that he done clocked her. He already clocked her about wearing the pins. Now he done clocked her about being HIV. Because what he said makes me believe that it's HIV positive. And I don't remember what it is now, but whatever it was, when they say people got that, got that disease back, So she has HIV. And we see her later on in the episode taking medicine. So okay, yeah, that's what it was. Now upstairs in the abandoned apartment, the stash house, we see Kool-Aid Dreadlock Boy. Now he got on a little toga, honey. He even he in the holiday spirit. And he up there counting his money. The guy, remember, the guy with the pretty eyes and the accent that we met over his uncle's house a few episodes back, he's in there to collect. Because remember, he's selling. So here's the thing. Okay, this is where it gets a little complicated. Okay, Ray is still selling for his uncle, but Ray ain't told his uncle about the prescription pad. He trying to do his own thing with the prescription pad, right? And keeping it separate. But that's a violation. So Ray already nervous when old boy shows up. And old boy starts asking questions about, why because Ray had about 4-5 cell phones sitting on that table. And they're not the same as the cell phones that the uncle must have given Ray. So he starts asking questions. And Ray lies and said, I don't remember where I got the phones from. And he starts telling the story about snitches and stuff. He said, so let me ask you one more time. Where you get those phones from? So then he said he got them from someplace. And the guy was like, that's a lie. I know they don't sell these phones in that store. I already checked. And it was like a real tense moment. And really, if he had shut up for another 20 seconds, Ray probably would have told him what was up and what wasn't up. But then he said, I'm just playing with you, man. I'm just joking. Halloween, happy Halloween. I'm just messing with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to scare you. But when Ray was like, well, I got to go to the car. When Ray went out to the car, old boy sat there and you saw his face drop. Something he saw he don't like. Something he don't think is kosher. So the party's jumping, okay? They got the Halloween going on full effect. They got the music playing. People out there in their costumes. They dancing. The kids are over to the side exchanging their candy. Well, that's what we used to do. We would go trick-or-treating, and then we would go back to my house, and we pour our candy out on the table, and we would separate it. Because, some stuff you eat, I don't eat. Some stuff I eat, you don't eat. But everybody can walk away happy, and we get to exchange in paper. Now, what David sees... And I predicted this, y'all. Go back to my review from the, second episode, third episode. I knew this. I said this. David, the guy with the pretty eyes, the Haitian guy, he comes out the apartment and he ends up jumping over the railing onto the ground from the second story, right? David immediately has a flashback to the night that Sky was killed. And that's what happened the night that Sky was killed. The person and we see David flashback. He was with Sky in the apartment when somebody rolled in there trying to rob him. Sky tries to talk the guy down. He tries to get the gun from the guy. Sky ends up running from the guy because the guy got control of the gun. And what we see is he's the guy that killed Sky. I said that. When David saw him at the uncle's house, David recognized him because, again, it's the eyes. Because the dude had on a ski mask, but you could see those eyes. And he heard his voice. So David knows it's him. He didn't recognize him at first because he had on a ski mask that night. He had on like a Jason mask. But when he lifted up the mask and David saw his face, he made all those connections. All of those connections. So we find out a lot in this episode. We find out why Shinobi doesn't like David. We find out how Sky was killed. We found out who killed Sky. We found out a lot of information in this episode. We found out a whole lot more too. We ain't even done yet. Sorry this is so long, but a whole lot went down in this episode, okay? So David is now having these flashbacks of that night. We see it for the rest of the episode. We see more and more of what happened that night. And what we end up seeing is that like I said, Sky went running. The dude went chasing him. He jumped off the landing the same way he did that night. And he basically executed Sky. Because Sky had been shot. But he was running. But he ended up, at a certain point he stopped running. And he was on his knees with his back to the guy. And he told David, don't watch this. Now by this time, David was in his bedroom looking from his bedroom. And Sky said, don't watch this. Don't look. And the guy ended up shooting Sky in the back of the head. So Sky was executed. Now, let's go back. I just had to get that out. I'm going to keep going back and forth with that. David walks up into his apartment. His mama done turned his apartment into a haunted house, and she got all kinds of stuff in there. She got the noodles that's supposed to be brains, and she got this, she got that. David is like, how we gonna eat that spaghetti after people done put their hands all in it? She was like, we not. This is for the party. David said, we are poor. We can't afford a party. She said, David, I am fully aware of our financial situation, and I told you I had it taken care of. But what you gonna do? We're gonna enjoy Halloween, and we will worry about it tomorrow. Tomorrow morning we can get back to crying about being poor. But tonight we're gonna have a good time. Cause she talking about something, we do this every year. David said we did it once. David is such an old man sometimes. But I understood where he was coming from. Like, I get it, but I also understood where Glow was coming from too, I guess. Cause you about to be evicted, so maybe not so much, but okay. So we see David and Seren talking. And Seren sort of put his foot, they're waiting for Seren's mom to come pick them up. And Seren sort of put his foot in his mouth. He said, man, I understand what you're talking about now. This place is crazy. David was like, I live here, excuse me. And he was like, man, I didn't mean it like that. He was like, I had a good time. Like, this is the best time I've ever had. Like, I'm sorry. And David sort of has an attitude. And Seren was like, please stop. Please don't do that. Like, please don't be mad at me. He was like, you're my best friend. And David looks at him, and David got this tear. He got that Denzel Washington tear thing. He was like, you're my only friend. And they have a moment. And Seren is scaring me because Seren is talking in finality, right? And he's talking about it doesn't matter anymore. And David was like, well, what's going to happen to you when you get home? And Seren was like, it don't even matter. And his answer to everything is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. His mother pulls up, honey. His mother see how that suit them in. Because they didn't, I mean, of course, they took the dress and everything, and he washed his face and stuff. But the suit is still toe up from where Miss Elijah then adjusted stuff to make it work for the Halloween. So the first thing his mother is talking about is, what in the hell did you do to your suit? Seren gonna stand up and say whatever I wanted to. I said, oh, God. Because if they had forgotten about that ass whooping, they just remembered. So David is like, Seren, stop. Like, don't, you know what I mean? Like, don't poke the bear, dude. And Seren said, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And David was like, are you going to be okay? Seren was like, it doesn't matter. And they hug for a long time. You know what I mean? They're both very emotional. They both crying, and they hug for a long time. And Seren ends up putting something in David's hand. And I couldn't make out what it was. Was it money? What was it? I don't remember what Seren put in David's hand. I mean, I don't remember. I didn't see clear enough. I don't know if it was money. I don't know what it was. But he put something in David's hand. And, you know, it's probably, you know, the way this show works, we'll probably see what it is next week. But we see, you know, Seren get in the car. And, of course, in my mind, I'm not going to lie, y'all. In my mind, I was like, is this boy getting ready to kill himself? Like, it was that deep of a moment. I said, this boy getting ready to kill himself. So, after Seren pulls off, we see Miss Elijah walk up on David, and David is real upset. And she was like, where's your friend? What's wrong? And he was like, he gone. And the way David said he gone made me be like, oh no, what is going to happen to this boy? Miss Elijah said, David, you can't fix everybody's problems. Sometimes you got to give people their problems right back. And I said, well. So David takes off running, and he ends up running to the stash house. And when he gets into the stash house, Shinobi is in there packing up the drugs and napkins. And David was like, what the hell? He said, because, well, first they have a moment because that's the first time David had been back in the stash house since Sky had been killed. And David was like, they were like, oh, you a big boy now? You coming up in here? And David was like, I ain't been up here since. And Ray was like, since my father? David was like, yeah. He said, yeah, well, you know, things got to move on. David was like, what you mean? Ray was like, look, I miss him too. But, you know, the best thing we can do is keep his legacy going, you know, pointing at the drugs, and like, we got to move on. So David starts fussing at them about using napkins for pills, which, okay. And Shinobi was like, look, that's the best we got. David said, what happens when it rains? He said, well, that's just collateral damage. Like, you know, you're going to lose some. And David was like, nah, not my shit. He said, you can do that with them samples that Uncle done sent through here. But on the stuff we going to get off of my prescriptions, nah, we not losing none of that because I need my money. And I said, okay, so David has turned into a whole thug. And he has these little baggies and he shows them how to put the pills in the bag and burn the bag and twist it so it's sealed, right? And he does it so smooth. So, of course, now Shinobi is really in his feelings. And Shinobi's going to whoop David's ass. Because Ray keeps stopping Shinobi. Because Shinobi was like, but Shinobi said something very important. Shinobi said, you keep walking up in here and trying to talk to me. You're a child in a grown man's world. He said, and you know good and well, Sky wouldn't want you here. Sky would want your ass in school somewhere. And I said that ain't the smartest thing I done heard come out his mouth all season. But he's right. He ain't supposed to be there. But he the smartest one in the room. Oh, anyway. So, but Shinobi tells him, he said, it's not going to always be somebody to stop me from getting on your ass. And David says to him, ain't nothing stopping you now. I said, David, you want that ass whooping. You want that ass whooping. I don't know why he want it, but he want it. He wants Shinobi to whoop that ass. So, but what we end up seeing the next morning, we see, we have like a little interlude. We see David talking. Okay, I can't skip this part, y'all. So that's that moment. So it's the next day. We see that's when we see the property manager taking her pills. And I was like, she got it. We see Gloria staring off into space. And David is like, what's wrong with you? She's like, my hips hurt. My ribs hurt. I said, uh-oh, here we go. Then we see Miss Elijah. No, I apologize. Then we see Shinobi laying down, philosophizing. And I said that wrong on purpose because that's what he was doing. He was philosophizing. And I knew somebody was giving him head. But I'm going to tell you who I thought it was. I thought it was Star. It was Miss Elijah. I said, clutch the pearls. I didn't see that coming. Like I said, I figured that Shinobi, they was getting ready to show us that Shinobi was a DL. But I thought it was going to be Star. It was Elijah. And so after they get done with that transaction, Shinobi starts talking to Miss Elijah about the fact that they need somebody to get them a doctor's number that's legit because they got the scripts. But, until they get a legit doctor number, then they're going to be, they know that they're going to end up getting stuck. So Miss Elijah was like, well, I can get that for you, but I need 20%. He was like, 20%? She said, look, honey, this is a felony, and this is not my first rodeo. So if you want my help, it's going to be 20%. And for every 3 prescriptions, and this, I got a question, and y'all put it in my comments, and I'm going to call, I'm going to Google it when I get off of here, because she said, and for every 3 prescriptions that I fill, I want a prescription of PrEP. Now, I just started hearing about PrEP in the last couple of years. How long? I didn't realize that PrEP had been around that long, because we established that this show, in the last chat, somebody Googled the year. It's in the late 90s, though. I didn't realize PrEP had been around that long, though. So y'all school me on that one. But she said for every 3 prescriptions I fill, I want a prescription of PrEP. I said, okay. So she going to get paid and she going to get what she need, right? So they agree to do it. Now, while this is going on the inside of the apartment, David and Star are on the outside of the apartment having this conversation. And Star's basically saying it's time for him to move on, that Miss Elijah's doing him a solid, but he's a runaway, and at this point, if Elijah gets caught, then it's kidnapping. He could get in trouble for kidnapping. He says, so I'm headed to Tampa until I turn 18. I got a scholarship waiting on me, but I've got to be 18 first. So, we see that Star's making plans to move on, and while they're having this conversation, Shinobi comes about the apartment. And, of course, he's looking at them like, what you looking at? faggot. I'm thinking, you were the one that was just getting your dick sucked by Miss Elijah. Okay. So, Star said, be careful of the company you keep. And David peeped it. I don't know if David, clearly I don't think David peeped all of it, but David peeped it. And that is where we end this episode. You guys, so good. So good. Like, I didn't do Basketball Wives tonight. I didn't do last night. I ain't done Greenleaf yet, but I was like, I gotta get this one out. Oh, the other thing we see Seren has a busted lip. So he got that whooping last night. Seren messed around and got his busted lip. He got a busted lip, but he's using that gloss that Miss Elijah gave him on his lips. And the scene sort of ends with the neighborhood moving on, and Sky's body is laying in where he was shot. Obviously it's symbolic. It's not his real body still laying there because everybody's moving around it, and it's almost as if we've gone back to business as usual, but Sky is still dead, right? So we end the episode. I'm sorry, y'all, because this was symbolic. We end the episode with David sitting in that chair with the crown over top of it, and he ends up putting that crown on his head that he wore for Halloween that Miss Elijah gave him, and that's where we leave off with him sitting in that chair. And I said, okay, so David is about to be the best damn drug dealer on the market. That's what David's about to turn into. And I've always said this, when you look at there used to be this show that came on, I want to say it came on BET, called American Gangster. And it came on, it started after the movie American Gangster came out with Denzel Washington and everything. And what they did was they profiled a whole lot of the big drug dealers from the 1990s, from the whole crack epidemic. And when you look at these profiles of these men, these were some of the smartest men. Had they been in a different world, in a different society, they'd have been running Fortune 500 companies. And they were running Fortune 500 companies. A lot of these men were just illegal enterprises. Now, some people, it's a white collar crime. They go to Club Fed. Others, they get convicted under RICO charges and they go to jail for the rest of their life in, the penitentiary. It's just all about this. So that's all I thought about when I saw David sitting in that chair. I said, David's about to be one of them Fortune 500 running CEOs of them pills down in the Ville. Anyway, y'all, I know this one ran long, but let me know what y'all think. Drop it in them comments. Peace.